tracked every single dollar in 2020, and here are the 4 big lessons that I learned from tracking it. And I'm not going to keep you in suspense. I'm not going to keep you waiting. Here's exactly what I spent. And some of you are saying, what in the world? What did he spend on in January and February? Oh, hold on. Before I get to that, let me just give you some context about this video itself. Okay? So calm yourself, calm down. Let me give you some context. Number 1, I live here in the San Francisco Bay Area where the cost of living is extremely high. Number 2, now even though I tracked every single dollar, I didn't necessarily have a budget in mind. Meaning that if I went over $3,000 or $4,000 that month, I just went over. I logged everything, but there wasn't a set budget for the month or even the entire year. And number 3, this video is not so much about criticizing me and saying you spent way too much money there or there. It's more about the lessons that I learned along the way. Because in the Bay Area, this might seem on the low or medium end, but in lower cost of living areas, this might seem extremely high. Now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about how I actually tracked it. Now, I have a few different methods. Number 1, I started with an Excel spreadsheet of forecasting and listing out every single expense, monthly expense, and for food and for miscellaneous items, I just generally put an estimate. And then how I really manually tracked everything was I used an app called Ixpenselt on the iPhone, and every time I would purchase something, make an online order, I would manually type it in. And if I forget, I would check my personal capital because it's linked to my credit cards and my account, so I could pull down history and see I spent $12 that day and just manually enter it in. Oh, and one more thing, I forgot. Every single month, $1,500 just goes to housing, all right? That includes utilities, trash, water, electricity, or $1,500 every month of that budget, okay? Now let's get to the exciting part. What did I spend my money on? And here's how much I spent. Focus. All right, let's go through January. The first thing that I noticed is I crossed a lot of bridges, all right? In total, I crossed 17 bridges that month, and the average here is anywhere from $6 to almost $8 for the Golden Gate Bridge. And the majority of the expenses for January is renovations, paying a contractor to redo flooring, redo paint, the bathroom, the kitchen. So a lot of that was renovations, and that went into February as well. But here's some really weird expenses. I spent a lot on food, that's for sure. That's for January and February, treating out friends. But the one big one that really stood out was this one, $1,911.60. I spent it on a magic trick. That's right, almost $2,000 on the magic trick. Although it's a really impressive magic trick, even though I haven't perfected it yet to even where I can do it on video, it's a really great magic trick, but that's one expensive trick. Let's go to February, where I spent almost $6,500. Let's see, I crossed a lot of bridges again, a lot of Chipotle, a lot of gas. Definitely a lot of gas with a lot of traveling, because each way, every time I crossed the bridge, it's about 40 miles each way, so that was definitely a lot of gas. Yeah, the majority of that went to food again and renovations. The bulk of it was renovations. All right, and then March, it was pretty average. That was when COVID hit, and I really took a look at my expenses and just tried to dial down on everything. $6,100 in May. So what happened there? All right, let's take a look. That month was a lot of housing expenses and also some unexpected auto maintenance. So on my way to get some piping from Home Depot, I accidentally hit a pothole on the highway actually, and the pothole was so deep that it dented my wheel. So I had to replace the whole wheel, and it was time for new tires, so I actually didn't want to have like uneven tires, so I got a new wheel, which was pretty expensive, plus 4 new wheels. So those that was $1,000. What else? Oh, I paid for my insurance, Geico there. That was $667 for 6 months. And Costco, ooh, I spent 1.2 grand at Costco. What did I buy there? Oh, a washer and dryer. What else did I spend? I spent a lot of Costco that month. I spent $878 at Costco again for security cameras. Like I said, the purpose of this video is not to judge my spending. I thought I'd just give you a sneak peek of some of the spending right over there. But the purpose of this video is to give you the lessons that I learned from tracking it. So here comes the lessons. Here's the first lesson that I learned, and I think it's a very important one that applies to life, and it's about consistency. I call this don't break the chain. Because to track for a year and do that every single day, it's really hard. Because in past years I have tried. I would track for a month to 2 months, 3 months, and then I would miss a day, and then I would miss another day, and I would track again, and I would miss another day, and I would track again. But at the end of like 3 months, I would say to myself, in my mind, I would say, you missed a bunch of days, so why are you doing this anyway? And that excuse, saying your data is not accurate now, just gave me the excuse to just give up. So as soon as you break the chain by missing 1 or 2 or 3 days, you allow yourself to just give up. So the main thing for me was making it a habit of just putting it down as soon as I buy the item, or if I missed 1 or 2 days, I would always keep the receipt or look at my personal capital, pull it down from my credit card transactions, and just make sure to manually add everything. Because as soon as I break the chain, I know I would stop. So that's how I was able to keep it consistent and track every single expense for the entire year. Lesson number 2. And I promise you, if you do this one and you're honest with yourself, you'll save a lot of money or be able to cut back on a lot of your expenses. And here's what I did. I charted down everything in Excel. I listed down every single expenditure and I categorized them. Food, housing, discretionary spending, business spending, auto, and here are some things, subscriptions, and here are the things that really jumped out at me, and I questioned every single line item. My cell phone bill, can I reduce this? My garbage bill, which I reduced by I cut that in half by using a smaller bin, because I was only throwing away just 1 bag full every single week, whereas those bins can hold like 3. So I reduced the size and I cut my garbage bill in half, saving $100-something. And also subscriptions. I cut out my Audible subscription and also my Spotify subscription because I wasn't on the road as much and I really wasn't using them. But one of the biggest things that jumped out at me was food. And I'm kind of ashamed to say it, but before I would have an average, and this is just average, of $700 per month on food, and that was just for me. Sometimes it would go a lot higher, especially when I'm treating out friends and family, and I would do that pretty frequently. So I would always eat out a lot because I was living in San Francisco and just going out every single day and just buying whatever I want to eat. But as soon as the pandemic happened, I made a conscious effort to reduce that to $250 a month. And ever since March, I've been very consistent with it, and most months it's been lower than $250. So that was a really big thing that jumped out at me. But I questioned every single expense, and if you do this to your shopping, especially your subscriptions, and sometimes your utilities, check your insurance provider. Can I cut back on this? Can I cut back on my cell phone bill or my internet bill, my garbage bill? I even learned how to do my own oil change and not go across the bridge as much if I didn't have to. So I questioned every single expense just by laying it all out and see if I really needed it. Lesson number 3 is that some of the smaller expenses really doesn't matter compared to the big 5, which is housing, transportation, food, insurance, and taxes. Most likely those 5 items, that's not 10 items, but those 5 items will take up the majority of all your expenses. And sometimes cutting back on the little items, like let's say a drink and dessert at a restaurant. Every time you deprive yourself, you're going out with your friends, everybody has a soda and a dessert, but you say, I'm gonna work on my budget, I'm not gonna have it. At the end of the year, you might be saving $700 to $1,000 just cutting back on all that stuff, which is great. But if you, let's say, upgrade your lifestyle and rent a new place for thousands of dollars more every single month, or you buy a new car and you didn't search around and you pay like $5,000 more for that car, well, all of a sudden, cutting back on that little thing, that soda and that dessert, that pales in comparison to that new car purchase. You know, just pick your battles wisely. I would suggest just try to reduce your housing or your transportation, your food, your taxes, and insurance. And if you can just tackle those main 5 things, you can have the little things like your dessert, your clothing, or whatever you want to spend on. Lesson number 4 is having a guilt-free spending plan. And what I mean by this is when you're trying to cut back and reduce your expenses, you're gonna go into this trap of feeling guilty about spending so much money when you know you should be cutting back, or you learn this habit of cutting back and you don't want to spend so much. For example, I wanted this computer for a long time. My current computer was 10 plus years old, and even though I upgraded the parts throughout the years, I would always justify saying, oh, it's too expensive, mine is working just fine. But I just made a guilt-free spending plan and just bought the computer, because you gotta live life sometimes, right? You have to live a balanced life, because I cut back on other things. For example, the iPhone 7. This is an iPhone 7 running on iOS 12 in 2021, when most people are running a new iPhone 12 on 5G, running iOS 14, right, the latest one. But for me, I don't care about this stuff, and I have a Honda Civic that's all paid off, and it looks great, it runs great, it's economical, when most people my age are buying these luxury cars, and I see it on Facebook, and sometimes I gotta admit, I do get tempted, even though I could afford one, just buy it outright. It's a conscious decision to just not do that when my car is working perfectly just fine. But you gotta live life sometimes, and that's where the guilt-free spending plan is. If you reduce your housing or your transportation, and that might not be for you, if you reduce your shopping or whatever, your food budget, then you should have a category where it's guilt-free, so you can spend it on things that you love, that would bring you joy. So thanks for watching the video, and please give me a thumbs up and subscribe, because it took a lot of thought to put everything into this video. I hope it was informative, and I'll see you next time.